Once again, and I will speak up for black men when needed, black men are being targeted by the U.S. government. So
Absolutely.
They did it to Martin Luther King Jr., they did it to Malcolm X.
They did it to everybody.
They do it to everybody.
Welcome to Standards TV, where we center the experiences of black and brown women. On today's panel, we have a bunch of brilliant women here to talk about the Surviving R. Kelly docu-series, which was a 6-part series. So we're going to talk about our feelings, our thoughts, and just kind of address a lot of the things that were, said and brought to light due to this documentary. So I want to jump right in and ask first, who in here had read about R. Kelly's alleged sex cults prior to the documentary? Okay, great. And who knew about the child pornography charges? Great. All of us. Okay. And knowing what you knew going into the documentary, did you feel prepared at all, like in terms of the content? No. Do you guys want to kind of talk about that?
I don't think you can ever be prepared to. It's one thing hearing about it and, having the kind of mystery that surrounds it, about it, he's charged with it, but then seeing it from, I think the thing about the documentary was seeing it from their point of view and seeing how it affected them psychologically, socially, and all these aspects, how they were alienated by people within their community, how they themselves felt guilty for having fallen for his trap, but also just all of the emotional turmoil that they had to go through. I think you just aren't prepared for that aspect of it.
I agree. I think that I agree. I feel like I felt like they were going to do that it was going to be more of a raw kind of documentary. I just didn't think it would be like that raw, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like it was so vivid and so like you could imagine like what they went through, like showing the rooms and stuff like that. Like it was like I didn't expect it to get like that deep in a way.
Yeah, I definitely heard about it, but when it was happening, I was pretty young. So I think I was in elementary school, so I remember all the jokes about R. Kelly peeing on people and stuff. But at that age, I didn't really understand how serious it was until I saw the documentary. And I'm like, this happened to real people, and real people were affected and are still affected by it.
Yeah, same. Like the one thing, so I feel like it was put out into the media, but even more so into like that whole kind of entertainment, and it became a sense of entertainment. Like Dave Chappelle did a joke about it on the Chappelle show, and like Boondocks did something about it. So I remember those things, and I was like, yeah, this is something that happened, but I didn't even fully understand the severity of it all because of the kind of response to it. Like, and then even when the sex cults thing started coming up, which was really recently, that was when we had Instagram and social media and things like that. So like shade room comments were in shambles. Like they were just saying all types of cracking jokes and in response to that. So it's like, how do you take it?
There's a lot of history of sexual abuse in my family. So my mom told me very early on, because like you said, it was happening when we were really young. And she told me like very early on, like I think maybe the first time I heard an R. Kelly song, like he's a pedophile, like he's abuses women. And growing up, when I would hear R. Kelly being referenced, I would just think to myself, why do people still like him? Like, do they not know that he is a pedophile? But it didn't dawn on me till much later on that people don't care about black and brown girls, so that's why. And when I first heard that it was coming out, I was sort of like, okay, like what is this for? Like if y'all not arresting him, like I don't really want to hear about R. Kelly anymore. But then I realized after watching it that like this wasn't just about R. Kelly. This was like the opportunity for the women who he's abused to finally, like very publicly with a very high level of notoriety, show to the world what he did to them. Because for so long nobody gave a shit. Like nobody cared at all. And like finally that docuseries was their opportunity to be like, this is what he did. And for so many years you made jokes about us, you still supported him, you still protected him, and like we're putting this in your face. Either you're gonna continue supporting him and be alienated by basically the rest of like culture, because at this point, like if you still support him, like what is wrong with you? Or you're gonna finally accept what has been going on for a very, very long time that you've just been choosing to ignore.
Yeah, definitely. Anyone else want?
Okay, yeah, no, I agree with everything that you guys touched on. So the series actually starts off, kind of addressing his past of sexual abuse, but also addressing one of his earliest victims, or one of the earliest victims that we know, which was Aaliyah. So I wanted to kind of ask you guys what struck you most about her abuse, because I don't really want to use the term relationship. I don't feel as though that's appropriate, because she was a child and he was an adult. So what kind of struck you the most about, learning about that?
To touch upon that, to talk about how I found out about his allegations when I was a child. I remember I heard about the Aaliyah allegations and I spoke to my mom about it and she said, that's not true. So my parents very much sheltered me. Talking about sex in our home just wasn't something that we did. I was always a very big fan of Aaliyah growing up. And I wasn't really sure what to make of the fact that her marriage was made to be not true.
Sorry. Wait, can you repeat the question?
What struck you the most about the details?
Oh, yeah. I didn't know until I watched the documentary. I knew that he married her. I didn't know that she was 15 at the time. I didn't know that he was 27. I didn't know that she lied about being 18. And I hadn't seen any footage of them, seeing the footage of them wearing matching outfits and like her not, they went on a show, talk show, and she wouldn't disclose her age. And just and his personal assistant was there while they got married. And to me, it was just, I couldn't wrap my mind around the fact that any 27-year-old wants to date, let alone marry a 15-year-old girl. Like, when I was 15, I was writing Harry Potter fan fiction. Right. I don't know 15. What I have in common with a 27-year-old, especially one that's a superstar, you know what I mean? So that's a whole different added dimension. And then to think about the fact that his personal assistant, these people around him knew that he married this little girl, lied for him, covered it up, and just and then you're you have the audacity to go wearing matching outfits with her and oh, that's my best friend. What do you, it just, it hit me in a way that I feel for Aaliyah just because no one was protecting her and I'm not trying to talk shit about her parents, but it seems to me that her career was more important than her safety and her mental and emotional health. You really just let some random dude, not random dude, you let a superstar, but just marry her at 15 just blows my mind.
That's what struck me about it the most. The people around him and around them that was enabling it. And that also struck me, it was weird to me because in the documentary, the people who were around him were condemning him in the documentary, yeah, he did this, he was always with her. But yet you were there. And at the time, you were there. You were watching this. You saw that they had a relationship and they said that they got caught having sex on the tour bus.
Multiple times.
So it's you guys knew this was going on, but nobody ever said anything. But now, all these years later that a documentary is coming out, now you want to say, oh, R. Kelly's the bad guy.
You don't even on the right side of history. Not
There's a few things I have to say. That shows to me how deep the abuse actually went, because of the people who did see him having sex with her on the tour bus were mostly women and backup dancers who he also met when they were young, and they see him as a father figure, a brother figure. So and then he also gave them a career. So I feel that shows how deep the abuse went, not only with women he was messing with, but with the people who surrounded him. Not only that, but I agree with you. I feel we shouldn't call it a relationship or even a marriage, because she's not here to speak up for herself and what she went through and how the whole thing went down. For her parents, they did say in the series that her parents got the marriage annulled as soon as possible, as soon as they found out. I also feel like you said, there is a point of where blame, I wouldn't say blame, or some kind of, I don't know how to explain it, should kind of be on the parents in a way, but I feel they saw him as a mentor in a way, where they trusted her with him, and in a way that also shows how deep his like trauma goes, where he was able to manipulate parents, like, oh, I'm an uncle, I'm a this, I'm a that, like, oh, she could be alone, I'm gonna build her career, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna write songs for her, like, this is gonna make her better. The whole time you're messing with my daughter and you're doing all these kind of things to my daughter. But like, before Aaliyah, even in the series, if we're talking about the series, there was a girl before her, which they talked about with one of the backup dancers, who, how one of the backup singers, when she met him through her 14-year-old friend, because she was 14 at the time. And she would talk about how her friend would like go to parties with him and be in the studio with him, and they would go off in the studio, and she saw her friend messing with him in the studio, which I feel like this is something he's been doing long before Aaliyah. Aaliyah was just like a...
Well, I want to kind of jump in right there too, because like, while we're still on the topic of Aaliyah, her, you know, her album Aging Nothing But a Number, that was a big conversation.
He came up with the album title, I think.
Right, definitely. So he was on the back of the cover.
I think he's the one who came up with the title.
He came up with this whole persona that she has. So who is saying, she's saying, don't worry about the fact that I'm 14, aging nothing but a number, or whatever. So I wanted to ask you guys, prior to watching the documentary, how did you guys feel about that phrase, aging nothing but a number? Because I heard that growing up all the time, versus how do you feel about it now after watching the documentary and seeing how it was how it's used? You know?
I used to say that all the time. I was like, age ain't nothing but a number. Because, you know, when we're younger, we were like, we would see these older celebrities and be like, oh my God, I love them so much. I want to marry them. And, all, you know, you want to build your white picket fence, your 2.5 kids and your suburb and all that stuff. And you're like 13 thinking this stuff. And you're not thinking, you're like, look, like if I ever had the chance, age ain't nothing but a number. But I think it's that ingrained mentality that kind of thing is okay for young girls to see, especially because we're so impressionable. We're so impressionable at a young age. So love is romanticized, and we see it from a young age, and we're like, we want that. And even if it's with an older man, we don't understand that it's wrong, because society has kind of built us up in a sense where it's like, it's okay for young girls to have relationships with older men. I feel like it's a completely different thing if you're both established in your life. If you're 30 and he's 40, that's completely different. But being underage and like, I think
part of the problem is that people in general, they hypersexualize black girls at a very young age. Like, I think that's probably part of the reason why he got away with it so long. People just look at black girls at like 8, 9, 10, 12 years old. They tend to hit puberty quicker, and they just sexualize them like growing up. And so we ourselves as black women begin to understand that as like a normal part of like our community, when that shouldn't be the case. And I think that was probably the case with her, and her situation is so unique because she died, and I feel like her management, her camp, her family, everything, they want to preserve her legacy and her memory, so much so that they're willing to erase that part of what her life was, which I can understand why they did that. But at the same time, like, I feel like it's sad because she was a victim, but that wasn't her life, and if they had just acknowledged it, then maybe the course of events would have been different.
I agree with what you were saying about black girls and black women being hypersexualized. It comes from the Jezebel stereotype, if everybody's familiar with that. And that Jezebel stereotype leads to the rationalization of sexual assault of black women. And growing up, like I said, I was very, very sheltered. Again, sex was not talked about in our home. I did not experience sexual trauma as a child, but I did experience sexual trauma as a teenager at age 18. So I think due to my own sexual trauma, that's why I feel very protective of all young girls, specifically because I have worked with children for the past 3 years, specifically black girls, because black girls are a very vulnerable population, specifically when it comes to sex trafficking. When we look at Centoya Brown, she was a victim of childhood sex trafficking. And like I said, black girls are more vulnerable for childhood sex trafficking and subsequently given harsher punishments.
I also
Yeah,
feel like,
I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. Not only are black girls specifically sexualized, hypersexualized, but I feel like all girls are told, everyone's told, girls mature faster than boys.
Yes.
So if
That's
you are,
psychologically, that's
that
not.
is, it's, yeah. But I feel like if you're telling girls and boys all the time that girls are more mature, where else are girls going to look for this romanticized idea of a relationship? If you're telling me I'm mature, then that means I have to be on the same level as an older man. You know what I'm saying?
And that's how he justified the things that he did.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Or tried to.
Tried to, yeah. So, sorry. No, it's cool. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna agree because like I just remember hearing that all the time and even saying it myself.
Yeah.
I did date older guys or, you know, whatever you want to call it, but pretty much like I also didn't have anyone to talk to about this to. Like, and then from my family background, it seemed okay because I knew so many women that, you know, had an older man and like they took care of them. I think that especially me specifically not having a relationship with my dad, that I didn't have someone to look forward to, like some guy or man to tell me what I deserve. And in that, I found myself looking for that in relationships. So like I was 17 dating a 23-year-old, and I know that is wild to say now, like me being 21 now and listening, like, yo, what was I doing? I was bugging.
Right.
But he was bugging too. Why would he want me? Like, I was 17. And no matter, you know, how mature I was, I knew where I was going. I was like, I already knew at that age. I was college bound. I wanted to go to law school. I knew all these things and had a plan for myself. But at the same time, I think I look back on that now and I'm thinking like, he pretty much kind of just swooped in on me feeling as though, oh, I'm mature and egging my head up with that. And then also because I was also naive, he made it really easily into my life. So I think that there is some key developmental stages that you go through in your preteen years, in your teenage years, and one of them is like you really want to be accepted. Right. Me personally, I didn't really hang out with many people in my high school because I kind of was like outcast at all. I had friends, but I just wasn't, you know, that popular girl. So I was just like low key. Most of my life was outside of school and with him. So, you know, thinking of that, when you have that, you become more susceptible to what anybody is saying. Like,
Oh no, definitely. And kind of going off of what you said, I feel like a big reason that a lot of people could connect with this documentary is, well, for me, I was in their shoes a lot of the time, you know, like there were definitely periods of my teenage years where I was in those situations with men who were way too older, too much, like way too older than me, and I would still pursue these situations because of either, you know, the idea that I had that it was okay, or because the excitement, again, the maturity thing, like as well. I'm like, I'm so mature already, and all of these different things that we're kind of taught at a young age. So I wanted to touch on, like, we're talking about, we see this obviously in our own communities, and we've seen this in like our own lives. So how often do you guys feel like you see men like R. Kelly hiding kind of in plain sight, like, and especially within our own lives, but in the entertainment industry as well?
I think that so many black families have multiple instances of sexual abuse in their family, an extensive history. Like, I don't know like one black family that doesn't have some type of instance of sexual abuse, whether it was their grandfather, great-grandfather, uncle, brother, whatever. Like, it's just so normalized. No, it's not normalized, but it's just so frequent that it becomes normalized, and we see it in popular culture, and we don't even bat an eye about it because we grew up seeing it. And I think that's part of the reason why black men are not that that's an excuse, but they're like, they're hesitant or reluctant to call out the people they see doing that because they see their fathers, they see their uncles, they see these adult men in their lives doing these things like this and getting away with it and nobody holding them accountable, nobody talking about it. And they just grow up to either emulate it or to like mitigate it and say, you know, oh, it's not a big a deal, because I would see all these trolls on Twitter after it came out with things he was doing, even after the docuseries, just obnoxious and then just like making jokes about like how can you make a joke? How can you make a joke of at this point, at this stage? And they were doing it knowing, not even like trying to defend him, but just trying to be obnoxious, just trying to incite him, just trying to like be annoying. And I'm just like, why is it a joke to you? Like, why is it funny? Is it because it's black girls? Is it because like, what is it about this that's funny? And so many black men, and I saw this video the other day about cancel culture and how it's becoming toxic and people just want to cancel everybody, and specifically the person that comes to my mind mostly is Chris Brown, because I hate Chris Brown. But regardless of that, like, people always talk so much. I hate so much. Regardless of like his music, his character, I don't care about any of that. Even if you're obnoxious, I don't care. But people always want to talk about, oh, he's changed, oh this, oh that. No, he hasn't. No, the bloggers don't know that he beat Karrueche the same way that he beat Rihanna, but because it wasn't a publicized instance, nobody talked about it. He stalked her. He harassed her online. He cyberbullied her, slut-shamed her.
He's homophobic.
He's homophobic, called Frank Ocean the F-word, all these things, and people can just mitigate it. Like, oh, he's changed, and so not just him, not to single him out, but so many abusers, not just black women, so many abusers in the entertainment industry that are protected, that are all of this. Kendrick Lamar, like, championed to get R. Kelly back on Spotify. Freaking, what's his face? XS Chance the Rapper literally came out and said, oh, the reason I didn't care about R. Kelly is because I don't care about black and brown women. And these are black men. These are black men saying these things. So they grow up seeing that happen, see it happen in their families, see other people doing it, and they just begin to think in their heads, or understand in their heads that it's just a normal part of like our community, our culture, our society, so why should I like care about it?
I have to say, sorry.
I saw that she's been taking notes for a second.
You're like taking notes.
I love it. Go ahead, girl.
Now, don't get me wrong, my father's a black man, my brother is a black man. I love black men, but as y'all heard me say in the outtakes, like, black men are the weakest link, and I do believe that might solely be, listen,
Go crazy.
I feel like specifically for the music industry, it's not just R. Kelly. Like, Drake is texting a 14-year-old
Bobby Brown,
who's been sexualized by the media from the jump. As soon as she came out, they were sexualizing her. So tell me what a 30-year-old and a 14-year-old have in common.
Especially to be talking about something like that.
like talking to boys and stuff.
Why are you giving her advice? You're not her dad. And then Drake was on.
These are all questions that need answers.
These are all questions that need answers.
Yes.
Drake was also on stage groping that 17-year-old, only asked her age after he touched her.
And then he proceeded to say something along the lines, oh, like, you're gonna get me in trouble.
Yeah, no, you're gonna get about it. Also, he dated an 18-year-old, so that's Drake, right? And then we have my fave, like, just about the love of my life, but I will, like, Michael Jackson, like, is notorious. I mean, he was acquitted, but, like, apparently someone in connection with, who went to Neverland committed suicide. So, my question is, what is up with the black men in the entertainment industry? You know what I'm saying?
I think it's a cycle of abuse.
Yeah.
The perpetuation of abuse that started with colonialization of white men using this as a tactic of oppression.
Yes.
And it is thus transferred into the black community where it is perpetuated by black men.
Yes.
It is this cycle of oppression where black men abuse black men and then black men then abuse black women or brown women. And it's sad that we still have not decolonialized oppression within the black community. Just because you are oppressed does not mean that you cannot be an oppressor. And I don't think we have gotten that idea yet that black men, while we love them, while we will always support them, we will always advocate for them, they still oppress black women in many instances.
And I don't think black women are off the hook either, because a lot of R. Kelly supporters are older black women.
Yes.
So you gotta
Smash that
answer,
later
like,
on.
you gotta tell me what that's about, because now
Right.
you're making like me look bad, you know, because I'm a black woman and you're over here like wiping his tongue on stage and just all this. And
There's a
Yes.
video of people like he was like groping at the edge of the stage. They were like
Groping him.
groping him, wiping down his body, touching his genital area, all these different things.
And so many older black women know that they have black girls in their family that are victims of, like you were saying, their uncles, their grandfathers, their dads, whatever it may be. So I don't know. Y'all just have to like tell me what's going on, because I'm confused.
They're protected.
Yeah.
They're protected.
Well,
The community protects them.
I'm so sorry. What I was gonna say is like, off of what you were saying was, I feel like you said, I agree with you that the black community has a lot of like sexual abuse within the household, and like it's not just black women. A lot of black men go through sexual abuse.
Yes, R. Kelly did.
Like these
And his brother.
celebrities, these celebrities that we're talking about, like why do we see so many celebrities? Well, these are the people who are in the limelight. This is an issue that's for a lot of people within the black community. Like you brought up Michael Jackson and R. Kelly. These are people who were sexually abused. R. Kelly by a woman.
Yes, but
His sister, yeah.
His sister. So it's like it's not just black men abusing black women. There's also black women abusing black men, or black men abusing other black men. Like you get what I'm saying? So I feel like it's an issue within the black community as a whole. But I feel like the issue of what you're talking about with Chance the Rapper, like you make This Is America, you talk about
Exactly. Yeah, he talks. He's a hotep because he talks about black women all the time. Pretends to be this champion, this advocate for black people, and that's the thing with so many black men. They on the like they can be so affirmed in their blackness and be in solidarity with black people, but on the back end be hella misogynistic as hell, especially towards black women. I'm just like
And tearing black women
exactly.
down and
He black out.
And that leads to a great. Oh, sorry. Go on.
I was going to get to
Oh, yes. Now that you don't.
it's like black women are always on the front lines for black men. Like black women started the civil rights movement, but put a black man as the face because they knew that's what would get them farther. And it's like black women, we are always bending over backwards, creating movements, doing stuff for black men. But little do you see black men sticking up for black women. Like Chance the Rapper, like come on, you're a black advocate. You want to talk about black media.
A black wife.
A black wife,
I
black
mean,
girl.
his wife isn't his wife black? I mean,
Yeah,
like,
I think she might be mixed. But
She's
I'm pretty
light
sure
skinned, but she's black. Your daughter's black.
Yeah.
I think he later came out and was trying to say that he was ignorant in the fact that he was saying that I was ignorant in thinking that.
Yes.
But just the fact that this is what a lot of black men have grown up thinking, because it was a black woman, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah, but
Oh, sorry.
as a community, I think we've become so desensitized, which is the issue that we don't, and we also struggle throughout history trying to figure out if we should support someone because they look like us or because they have the right views for us. And I feel like we want to support these people because these are black people that represent us in the media. These are black people who got us somewhere in the music industry, in these different kind of industries. So we want to support them. We love their music. We want to support, but it's like there comes a point where it's like you can't.
You don't matter if you're black.
And you're like,
Yeah.
and like, I think a lot of people. Amen. Yes.
Say louder. Go ahead.
Okay, so to expand upon what everyone else is saying,
Right.
yes, R. Kelly was a victim of childhood sexual trauma and abuse, which continued the cycle of abuse by continuing to abuse women. So obviously, individuals who experience sexual trauma and abuse are more likely to abuse others. To spend about what you were saying, Vivian, Drake. He was dating an 18-year-old girl, but he knew her when she was younger.
Yes.
He knew her when she was 15, 16, 17, and then I suppose waited for her to be older.
Tyga, Kylie Jenner.
Same thing.
So didn't the game date Kylie Jenner too when she was?
I feel like everybody's dating Kylie Jenner. That's my business.
Yeah,
She was. I'm not gonna talk about that.
So, in terms of this predatory behavior, the privilege scale certainly protects these predators. So, as we all know, the privilege scale begins with white men at the top and black women on the bottom.
Yes.
Black men, while they are an oppressed and marginalized group, as everybody else is saying, they can be oppressors. And this privilege scale really does protect predators because black men, again, while they are a marginalized group, they still have male privilege that protects them and allows them to be abusers and oppressors.
So yeah, everything you guys just touched on kind of leads me into this next point. So there was a moment in the documentary that really struck me and was particularly hard to hear because this is something we talk about all the time, but it's different when you hear, people say these things out loud. So there was a juror who made this exact comment. I just didn't believe them, the woman. I know it sounds ridiculous, the way they dress, the way they act. I didn't like them. I voted again and I just disregarded all of what they said. So when he said that, it was just like, wow, okay. So according to the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Statistics, this is from 2013, African American girls and women aged 12 years old and older experience higher rates of rape and sexual assault than white, Asian, and Latina girls and women from the time period of 2005 to 2010. So this is a prominent issue. You talked about sex trafficking earlier as well. 40% of sex trafficking victims in the U.S. are African American women as well. And we are not that, well, not we, but the African American population is not that high in this country. So I wanted to kind of ask, what are some of the ways in which you think black girls are silenced and ignored, and how have you seen those ways in kind of a historical context? How have we gotten to this point that people can feel so comfortable to say things like this?
Yeah, to go back upon the Jezebel stereotype, black women were presented in a hypersexual light, and that comes from slavery and how female slaves were sexually assaulted and raped, and how that is still pervasive today in black girls not being believed when it comes to sexual assault. Now, the Me Too movement began in 2017, and that was only 2 years ago. So think about it like this. Sexual assault has only been talked about openly in the past 2 years, and it's nowhere near where it needs to be. For so many, not only black girls, which is a very, very important population because they are often silenced, but women in general are often called liars. For example, Dr. Blasey Ford, during the Kavanaugh hearings, she was called a liar by our President Trump. So it really just is a problem for all women and girls to be believed. And Me Too only begins the conversation about sexual assault, and it's not anywhere near where it needs to be.
I definitely feel as though that is the main, that's the root of it all. But I think there's also this idea that black women are so strong. And we even tell ourselves that we are strong. And we tell other black women, that whole strong black woman idea, I feel feeds into it because you become so strong, it's like you can defend yourself. And if you're not allowed to be victimized,
Be vulnerable,
because we're supposed to be able to defend ourselves, defend others, with the stereotypes of us being loud and rambunctious and things like that. We're supposed to be able to prevent that. We're supposed to be able to take the beating and just move on with it. And I think that when you tell a black girl, that's why for me, I feel like the worst thing you can tell a black girl is that they're strong.
Yeah.
Yes, you can acknowledge that you have strength within you, but black girls don't need to hear that they're strong. They need to hear that they're supported. And I think that's why we have so many people ignoring this issue, is because we feel as though we can defend for ourselves, or other people feel like we can defend for ourselves. I hear, not even with other cases, but specifically with black women or black girls, when they're sexually assaulted, it's like, well, why didn't you do anything about it?
Or she was fast.
I think that comes again. I think all women are sexualized. This obsession with, not to get too graphic, but why is it that in the porn industry in the 70s it was like a bush, everyone had a bush. Why are we all shaved? Why do you want me to look like a prepubescent? You know what I'm saying? once you hit
I see what you're saying,
puberty,
the trends have
yeah,
shifted,
you know what I'm saying? Once you hit puberty, you start to grow hair. Why is it now that it's like gross for me to have hair, but that's a signal of me being older, you know what I'm saying? So we sexualize like girls in school uniforms. So I think all women are sexualized, hypersexualized, all girls, but especially with the Jezebel thing, I think it's particular to black women. And my question is like, for that juror, why is it, and this is common again for all victims except for like victims of like robbery, you know, but like, why is the onus on a child? Why is the responsibility to prevent your assault on someone who does not know better? Like R. Kelly was not statistically, biologically, our brains aren't fully matured until we're about 25, specifically with decision-making skills. So you're telling me that a 15-year-old who has not yet reached that point, like biologically, is somehow responsible for a 27-year-old's actions. Like, just say you hate women.
Exactly.
Just say you hate black women and say with your chest.
That's what he said with his chest.
Yes.
Literally.
Yes.
He said that with confidence.
And
he laughed
he
about it
also said,
too.
like, I didn't like them. What
Yeah.
don't you like about
What do you
a
have to
little?
like?
Yes, and like, what if a little girl saying that a man, R. Kelly was seen giving her money, right, in the video, was peed on, which is, I don't have a pee kink, so I have to say that's probably one of the most degrading things that you could ever do. Like, you peed on a little girl and then you proceeded to rape her, but you don't like the little girl? Like, why don't you like the man who did that? Like, you're a racist and you hate people, women.
But also, like, the little girl didn't testify. So, like,
She
he
didn't.
didn't get
Her
to,
family didn't let her.
Yes.
They didn't let her, and then the people he was talking about were the people who were speaking up for her. And if we take it back, like, historically, like you were saying, like, black women with strength and like how black women are hypersexualized. Like, black women had to be strong because you were separated from your families and you had to stick up for yourself and your children because that's all you had and like what you could do. Not only that, but like there is like a long history of trying to scientifically separate black women from like being human in a way. So Thomas Jefferson himself, one of our founding fathers, sat there and talked about saying that black women slept with orangutans and all this other stuff, but yet had a black mistress and children.
Yes.
So like you can mess with a black woman sexually, but to see her as a person is different, and I think that's a trend. And if you think about the juror, he's at the top of the scale as a white male.
Yes.
I think he was Asian, but either way, don't matter. Either way. Either way. Still, that's what I'm saying. It's right there.
Whatever he is, not only that, but he was an older male, and if you think about it, we're only about 50 or so years displaced from the civil rights movement. So we don't know what kind of household he was grown up with and how he was grown to view black people, especially black women at the time. Because our rights are just now coming up, if anything, which wasn't like our rights were fought for, but it was more for black people as a whole, with a black man as like the face or black man as the face, than for black women rights all over, not only in the black community, but
And other women didn't fight for us. Susan B. Anthony was recorded saying that she was not going to fight.
She would
She
rather
said cut
chop off her
arm.
hand
Yes.
before she would fight for black people.
And now she
Black
dead,
women to vote.
and probably in hell, and that's all I gotta say about that.
But it was done strategically though, for them to be older on the stand as well. So a lot of people were talking about that because remember the actual trial happened like 5 or 6 years after. So these girls were then in their early 20s. So basically our age, saying this happened to me when I was younger. So basically they were saying, you know, R. Kelly's legal team wanted adults on the stand rather than children, even though regardless, that's still not a reason or an excuse. But
It detaches, you know,
the innocence.
Yes.
Because
He's seeing grown women.
see it.
And witnesses, your memories are just unreliable, like everyone's memories. So
Especially in
as the time,
trauma.
especially in trauma, so as time goes by, those memories are gonna fade. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, well, we're gonna, go ahead.
Okay, so when it comes to sexism with all women, we are told to behave a certain way. Specifically, we need to have children by a certain age. We're not allowed to have hair, as you were saying. when it comes to individuals who have been sexually assaulted and they come forward, there is a lot of victim blaming, like, oh, well, what were you doing to provoke this person to behave this way? You know, I feel like in feminism, there's a lot of focus on white feminism. And white feminism specifically forgets about women of color, specifically black women. You know, growing up, I was told a narrative, for every man's dollar, women make 77 cents. But specifically, for every white man's dollar, white women make 77 cents. Asian women make 77 cents or more, because Asian wealth and white wealth is comparable. Black women make within the 60-cent range. Hispanic and Latina women make within the 50-cent range. But Native American women weren't even included in the study. And Native American women specifically, and Native Americans as a whole in this country, are a forgotten population.
I think they experience the most sexual abuse by race.
And it's so polarized that people don't even consider it.
Yes.
Because I'm Native American, and my grandmother, she left her community because she was sexually assaulted, and her whole entire family abandoned her. And it's crazy because, like, I feel like my nativeness and my blackness are very interconnected. Like, they're kindred spirits, because a lot of the trauma, and although like it's different trauma, it's very like it's related, and I can feel it like in both those identities. And like you were saying, Native American, they're completely like not to compare and contrast, like, oh, who's more oppressed, but Native women, nobody even thinks about them. Like, nobody even spends any thought on it. It's almost like they're not even Americans. It's almost like they're not even like, yeah, we're not including you in our studies. We're not sociologists, all these people, psychologists. They just totally forget them. They totally rule them out, like, completely.
The last thing I would like to say is that historically, white women were expected to be pious and pure. However, the Jezebel stereotype steers from being pious and pure by being hypersexual and freaks. So that's where the term freak comes from.
Learning things that, and we're gonna kind of start to wrap up because we've been talking for a minute. But I kind of want to end on this last question. So, what do you guys feel as though justice can look like for survivors? Because I think one of the biggest things, like, we talk about all these problems that we have going on, but like, how do we kind of move forward and make sure that the survivors get their reparations and get their healing, I should more so say, get their healing, and that this doesn't continue to be a problem.
I think to start off, and I learned this I was telling you earlier about my Wikipedia deep dives. Bill Cosby was accused by, I think, over 60 women. He was convicted, I think, of 3 counts of sexual misconduct because the statute of limitations had expired on almost all of the cases. So the first thing we need to do is get rid of the statute of limitations. There's no reason why, and we all know that rape and sexual abuse is traumatizing. You can develop PTSD.
Absolutely.
So there's no reason why we're expecting people to be able to confront their own trauma immediately after it happens, and not giving them the grace to kind of come into that later on down the line. So the statute of limitations on sex crimes needs to be abolished. R. Kelly needs to be arrested. He needs to be convicted. I'm looking for an all-black female jury, you know what I'm saying? And then not only does he need to be put in prison, but he needs to have his extremities removed, castrate that motherfucker, so he can never do anything. And that's just me.
I think personally, what we can do to help the victims is, one, believe them.
Yes, absolutely.
One, believe them. Send the people who abuse them to jail. People just need to pay for their actions, honestly. And victims, I think a lot of times victims, yes, they're confronting their abuse, but also they're afraid to come out because they're afraid they won't be believed, people will make fun of them. Things that happen to the victims of R. Kelly and other people, they think will happen to them. So just believing and supporting the women it happens to, honestly.
I found it really interesting at the end, not one of my favorite parts, but one of the most emotional, poignant parts of the documentary was when they were asked at the end, all his victims, like, what if he's watching this, what would you want to say to him? And then all their responses were so different, which I found really interesting. A lot of people were like, I hate you, I don't forgive you, which they had every right to feel that way. And one woman said, like, I want you to get help. Like, I hope that he gets help. And the fact that Black women are just so empathetic and sympathetic like that, I think is incredible. And to answer your question, I think what it just looks like is whatever a victim wants. We need to listen to what victims want. What do you want? Do you want this? Do you want that? Like we're saying, get rid of the statute of limitations. You could steal somebody's car, and if they find out 70 years later, you're still going to jail.
Yeah.
Like, but there's no statute of limitations on sexual assault. Like what? That's insane. Like, so yeah, I would think that more than anything, I would want healing for them. And I think that's not more important than justice, because sometimes healing comes in the form of justice. And this entire docuseries, like I was saying before, I think more so than anything, I think it was for the victims. It was their closure, it was their healing, it was their opportunity to let people know, and it was an attempt to protect other people. So I think that, you know, justice might be in the form of a docuseries, it might be in the form of like a conviction, but whatever it is, we need to listen to them first and foremost.
I know that. I feel as though we definitely do need to focus on the Me Too movement. Obviously, the Me Too movement is only 2 years old. You know, that was the first time in which women and men felt it to be acceptable to speak out about sexual assault for the first time. You know, I'll be 23, and I was sexually assaulted when I was 18 years old, and I didn't speak openly about it until I was 21. It was shortly before the Me Too movement where I spoke openly about it, but I began to speak more openly about it after the Me Too movement, because the Me Too movement paved the way for so many individuals to share their stories openly. And there still needs to be a lot of progression with the Me Too movement, because there are individuals who do come forward and they are still being called liars, but it is definitely a step in a good direction in terms of what I would like to see for R. Kelly and other abusers. I would hope that they go to jail, but unfortunately justice is not always served, especially when you look at cases like Harvey Weinstein, or the fact that Trump has sexually abused women himself, and he's in a major position of power. You know, I think maybe we should even think about a deconstruction of the privilege scale, because how is it that we still have a patriarchy in 2019? So if we deconstruct the privilege scale, then I think we might see some progress.
I agree. Down with the patriarchy. I want to watch it die in fury death while I sit on my throne and rule the world.
But what you said makes me want to bring up something else besides the question. I want Black men to stop justifying what R. Kelly did by saying, what about Hugh Hefner? He's done all these things with young girls and Harvey Weinstein. And I'm just like, you cannot justify what he did by saying, oh, well, you have to acknowledge, like, or keep the same energy with these people. It's like, no, we're gonna keep the same energy with all of you, the same exact energy. That's what needs to happen. You cannot get the same privileges as white men for raping and sexually assaulting women. Why do you even want that?
Why is that something you're fighting? Why aren't you holding like other Black men accountable? Like you think like I was saying earlier, I'm holding Black women accountable. Like the Black women wiping his tongue and all that shit. Y'all could we could throw hands. You know what I'm saying? So why don't you have that energy for other Black men? Like R. Kelly is unfortunately a part of our community as a Black man. You know what I'm saying? Now we can shun him, but you need to
But it needs to be a collective.
It needs to be collective. Exactly. Exactly.
You protect yourself. Because me personally, I have to admit that as a Black woman, I have this instinct in me that every time a Black person does something, instinctually I want to be like, okay, but maybe he didn't, or maybe she didn't, or maybe just because I know that as Black people we just get the brunt of it all. But at the end of the day, I'm just like I can't, because he was raped by his sister, and I 100% believe that if that hadn't happened, he wouldn't be the way that he is. And I have this instinct as a Black woman to protect Black men as much as I possibly can, but there comes a point where you just have to be like, I can't.
Wrong is wrong.
Yeah, wrong is wrong.
Yes.
My biggest thing, I feel like what we really need in courtrooms is real jurors.
Yes.
And like you said, honestly, like breaking down the scale of privilege, because I don't want to sound like I'm playing like devil's advocate or anything, because I feel like the victim should not be victimized. Me as a victim myself, I agree with that. But there's been so many times in history where white women or women who aren't black who have been believed and like lied on people, such as
specifically black
such as with Emmett Till. Let's listen with that.
Absolutely.
And black men,
Jr.
right? And black men are put into jail. There's probably still black men in jail who have been lied on, and like men of color and people of color put into jail because people use their privilege to lie on them and use their I'm a victim to lie on them. So I feel like there should be laws set into place where it's like you're listening to victims, but you're not just demonizing somebody because like I don't know how to explain it. Do you guys know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel like at this point, R. Kelly was sexually abused as a child, so everybody, it's pretty common knowledge that like if you are a victim, you're more likely to victimize someone else. The cycle of abuse is real. So that for me is like proof. You know what I'm saying? Then I don't know why he literally married a 15-year-old. So that he should have been done.
Should have been in jail.
I was Elise's parents, like that was exactly. And then you have like he definitely married her. He had her lie about her age, and then he's on video peeing on someone on top of that. And then we have other women coming out to say that he did these things. So at what point, like, what else do y'all need? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's court documents, there's video, and there's witness testimony. So like, just
a state of denial.
Just a state of denial. So you hate black women with your chest.
I'll let you to make your points.
I was going to say, to like kind of wrap it up, we just need objectivity in the courtroom. I think a lot of people come in with subjectivity, they come in with their previous biases, even though they're told to leave these biases at the door, and they rule in favor of their biases and let their biases make the judgment for them instead of looking at the case from perspective and letting that tell the story for
The whole justice system gotta go.
Yeah.
The whole
I feel like as a community, as a race, I feel like we also need to take mental health into play and open these doors, especially in the black community for black men. Not this, you need to go to church, pray on it.
Yeah.
You need to do that. Men who have been hurt in sexual abuse, women who have been hurt in sexual abuse, it should be easier and more open for them to talk to someone about it. Or it should be in the home where they feel like they could talk to someone about it. So there's not this continuous cycle. Like, unpack your stuff with somebody you need to unpack your stuff with. So you're not taking it out on someone or turning it into a habit later on where you're hurting someone else. For real.
So that is really where we're gonna wrap it up. But before I close out, I definitely want to touch on some different resources, because I know this is a very sensitive subject. A lot of women are victims of sexual assault, and there are definitely some platforms that are helpful for black women. So there's a platform called Beautiful Scars, and it provides a community for black women who are survivors of male sexual violence. All of this will be in the description box, by the way. Therapyforblackgirls.com. This is a website that actually helps you find a therapist that they can connect you with someone who is like culturally on the same page as you. And Black Women's Blueprint is a nonprofit that works towards social, political, and economic equity for women of African descent. And all of those platforms, and there are plenty more as well that I'll leave in the description, because this is a very serious topic, and mental health is something that we all have to take very seriously. Our mental and spiritual health is very important, and what unfortunately happens to a lot of young girls is something that we have to deal with. So yeah, I want to thank you guys so much for being here. Give yourself a round of applause. You guys were amazing. Thank you so much. Comment your thoughts, subscribe to our channel, follow us on the IG, okay? I'm gonna leave all of their information in the description, so if you found what they said interesting, go ahead and find them. And yeah, so we'll see you guys next week, and I guess just stay hydrated. I don't know. Do y'all have any advice?
Stay hydrated, stay productive.
What
Don't
else?
let these people bring you down, because 2019 is about growth and overcoming.
It sure is.
Not only that, but be the person that you wanted to be growing up.
Amen.
And to all my queens, don't be looking for your king. Build your throne and and wait for him to join you.
Oh, okay.